Hello friends, my name is Emile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're taking a look at some Italian cars and we'll jump straight into it. The first car today, which is the Ferrari 458 Speciali, 597 horsepower, 3,075 pounds of weight. So the 458 Speciali is a bit of an interesting car, this one actually. It is quite a high PI, it is almost into R class actually, it's very top of S class. And it's essentially just a 458 on steroids. Basically everything about this car is better, it's stripped out, it's got more power, so on and so forth. Interestingly enough, handling characteristic wise, this very much just drives like a 458, just a little bit better. It's very standard supercar to drive, that's how I would describe it. It does like to kick its rear end out a bit if you put the power down too quickly. It can be a little bit tricky to drive. It's moderately hard to drive, but it isn't, you know, super challenging, and there isn't all that much understeer in this vehicle. Yeah, the 458 Speciali drives very similar to a normal 458. However, when it comes to setting lap times, this thing is ridiculously quick. When we sent it round last season, this thing was way up there. This beat a Ferrari 488 GTB. That hasn't gone around the track in this season yet, but it'll be curious to see how these two cars match up in the end, and that could be a potential top of the leaderboard competitor. Speaking of top of the leaderboard competitors, next up we have the Maserati MC12, 624 horsepower, 3,142 pounds of weight. The MC12 is one of my all-time favourite supercars. I absolutely love the MC12. I think it looks absolutely fantastic and it drives absolutely perfect to boot. This is, in my opinion, one of the best handling cars in this game. This is up there for me with cars like the Dodge Viper ACR and the Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale. This is a ridiculously good car to drive. I highly recommend you go and drive this thing now. Even midway through this video, go boot up Forza 6, drive this car because it is absolutely perfect. Straight line speed isn't this car's particular forte. The Enzo would be the car you should go with if you want more straight line speed. The Enzo has more power, it weighs a bit less, it has less downforce. But when it comes to corner munching and just overall hot lapping, nothing can really touch a well-tuned MC12. Of course, this is a standard MC12, but it still handles perfect. You upgrade this thing, and it handles even better. This is my S-Class car of choice. It is just fantastic. Next up, Lamborghini Murcielago SV, 661 horsepower, 3,850 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today. It is tied with the next car, however. Two cars with 661 horsepower. It's quite a specific number, but somehow it managed it. Anyways, the Lamborghini Murcielago, of course, this was Lamborghini's big flagship supercar before the Aventador came along, and the SV is the final evolution of the Murcielago. This was the most powerful, most focused, most extreme version of the Murcielago. To drive, it is decent. It isn't quite as good as the Aventador. When you look at these cars side by side, in Forza Motorsport 5, these cars were very close, like there was 1 PI in it. I think there is a bit more distance between the Murcielago and the Aventador when it comes to Forza Motorsport 6, but there still isn't all that much in it. For my money though, the Aventador is the better driving of the two. The Murcielago may have an advantage when it comes to top speed. Ultimately though, you don't really notice it. The Aventador is the Lamborghini flagship supercar you want to go for. The Murcielago is just a little bit too understeery. The gearbox isn't great in this thing either. It's a bit long for my liking, but it isn't a bad car per se. Next up, Ferrari 599 GTO, 661 horsepower, 3,538 pounds of weight. See, I got it right that time. Yeah, of course, this is tied for most powerful car with the Murcielago. However, unlike the Murcielago, this is not a supercar. This is essentially just a big exotic Grand Tourer. It's actually kind of surprising that this weighs less than the Murcielago. I was honestly expecting the Murcielago to weigh less than the 599 did, because, well, that's a supercar and this is a GT car, but there you go. I guess that's because the Murcielago has 4-wheel drive. This has rear-wheel drive, and 661 horsepower through the rear wheels seems like a bit of a recipe for disaster, and honestly it isn't as bad as you think it would be. This car is slidey. it does have to be said, it's an okay car to drive. It isn't sort of the Ferrari GT car I'd rather go for the F12 Berlinetta, which is a better driving vehicle. But the 599 GTO cannot be matched when it comes to straight line speed in GT cars. This car is just stupidly, ludicrously quick. It's not quite as quick in a straight line as it was on Forza Motorsport 5. Back on that game, this thing just used to dart. It isn't quite up there anymore. There are quite a few cars that have come in to sort of replace it. But the 599 GTO certainly isn't a slouch. This is probably the fastest car in a straight line here today. Next up, going from the most powerful vehicles to the least powerful vehicle. This is the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, 245 horsepower, 1,543 pounds of weight. This is the lightest car here today by over 1,000 pounds. This thing is just exceptionally light. This thing is just... It's a crazy, crazy contraption, this. It doesn't have all that much in the way of power, however, it doesn't weigh anything. The engine in this is fantastic. It revs, it has a ridiculously high red line. It makes a fantastic noise. This thing is incredible. When it comes to the actual driving this car, you can feel the fact that this thing weighs nothing. It is just so light, it is very, very chuckable. Suspension is floaty on this vehicle. It isn't as bad as you'd expect it to be. You know, if you put 1,200 horsepower in this thing and leave stock suspension, then yeah, you're not going to have a fun time. This thing really likes to go on three wheels. But, I mean, standard, it isn't actually that bad. It's a fairly decent car to drive, and as you can see, it is just stupidly quick round corners. This little thing will just absolutely dart everywhere. It is incredible. Yeah, this car could go actually quite high up on the leaderboard, despite only having 245 horsepower. It is incredible. Next up, a Maserati Gran Turismo S, 433 horsepower, 4,146 pounds of weight. This is the heaviest vehicle here today by quite a margin. Yeah, the Gran Turismo, of course, was Maserati's GT car. I don't know if they still make the Gran Turismo. Maybe they do. I don't actually know. But yeah, the Gran Turismo has been around for quite a while. Of course, this is the car that the Alfa 8C bases itself on. But the Gran Turismo itself, how does it actually drive? It is pretty decent. Compared to most of the vehicles here today, it's very easy to overlook the Gran Turismo. And in the grand scheme of things within Forza Motorsport 6, it isn't hard to overlook the Gran Turismo. There are better vehicles out there, especially within its class. The Gran Turismo will suffer from low to mild oversteer. It does like to get its tail out, this thing. I guess that's not really surprising. I mean, it's got a decent amount of power and it's a relatively heavy vehicle. Yeah, don't expect this thing to be exactly busting the top of leaderboards. But it isn't bad to drive. It just wouldn't be my choice if I was looking for this sort of car in this class. You want to sort of look more towards the BMW M4, Lexus RCF. You know, they're better driving vehicles, especially in the case of the M4. The Gran Turismo just doesn't add up. And finally today we have the Lancia Delta S4, 247 horsepower, 2,646 pounds of weight. This is the second least powerful car here today by 2 horsepower. Yeah, the Delta S4, this is a pretty interesting car actually. It's a mid-engine 4-wheel drive twin-charged rally Group B car. And that already tells you how insane this thing is. I love the Lancia Delta S4. It is just such a crazy, crazy contraption. When it comes to actually driving it, it is kind of floaty. This car has... It's weird. I think it's mainly due to the sort of body roll and the way the sort of suspension works. This car can be very random on the understeer. Sometimes you'll turn it into a corner and you'll get along absolutely fine. You can plant the power and it handles pretty decently. Other times you will just get a load of understeer. It is a weird car to drive. It definitely isn't what we'd call the most consistent vehicle in the world. It certainly isn't bad though. I'm sure if you upgrade the suspension on this thing, it would be pretty decent. As it stands stock, it's not a terrible car to drive. It's just very random and it's sort of hard to get a feel for this car, but once you get everything together, it is relatively quick. It doesn't weigh all that much. It's got 4-wheel drive, and of course you want to drive it just because it's really awesome. Anyways, onto the times, and the 458 Speciali is on the top of our leaderboard now with 118.270, which pushes the CLK into second place. The Maserati MC12, it tried. If this thing just had a little bit more straight line speed, it could easily challenge the 458. The 458 just got a lucky lap in. Otherwise it was setting 119s. But the MC12 goes into third with 118.617. Lamborghini Murcielago goes into fifth with 119.773. And the Ferrari 599 GTO finds itself in ninth with a 120.848. So the 599 did a relatively decent. The Murcielago beat a McLaren F1 and a 12C, which is pretty impressive. The 599 GTO beats a 911 Turbo S, which is, again, that's pretty darn good. Anyways, back onto some more, and the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale goes into 16th for 122.180, which is seriously quick. That thing gets sandwiched between a GTR and a Caterham, which is pretty strange. Beats a bunch of Ford GTs, Lamborghini Diablo. Yeah, that thing is just stupid fast. Moving down the board, and the Maserati Gran Turismo S goes into 38th place with 127.636. Goes in between a brand new 2016 Camaro and the Ford Mustang, so that isn't that bad a time. And the Delta S4 goes into 43rd with 128.878, which is actually really decent. Beats out a Shelby Cobra and a Lotus Carlton. Just loses out to a 2015 Subaru WRX STI, which is like a modern rally car. So yeah, really impressive time from all the cars here today. They all did really well. Anyways, friends, that is it for this episode of the Forza Top Gear Laps. In the next episode, we're going to be doing a bit of a special. We're going to be taking a look at the cars of the Fast and Furious film franchise. So I hope you join me for that. As always, I want to thank you all very much for watching. My name's been The Real Emile. As always, if you have any themes you'd like to suggest, put them down in the comment section below, and I will get to them at some point. Yep, thank you all very much for watching. My name's been The Real Emile, and until next time, farewell.